Always there is a beginning, a new day, a new month, a new season, a new year. Forever the old passes away and newness emerges from the richness that was. Nothing is ever lost in the many changes time brings. What was, in some way, will be, though changed in form. Always there is a beginning, a new day, a new month, a new season, a new year.
I'm looking out there and I'm seeing a lot of people of many different ages, including some young people. Would any young people want to come up here? And I have some things I want to talk about and I need some help. So if you're a young person, that would be anyone under the age of, let's say, 18, or anyone between 18 and 100 who just feels like coming forward and stretching their legs and sitting up here. Parents, friends of children, anyone who wants to come up. Please come on up here. So, oh my gosh, look at all these people. John's taking off his jacket. It's getting serious, or it's getting hot in here. Oh my gosh, look at all these folks. Okay, so I need some help. How many of you like math class? Okay, John. Okay, Carla. Okay, we'll get there. So there's something that's my favorite shape. Does anyone remember? I talk about it a lot. Maybe you have a guess. It might be shaped in doesn't have any sides. Yes. Circle, yes. And you know what's something that's so cool about a circle? Not only is it shaped like a pizza, or a pizza shaped like a circle, but that there's something called the middle, and then there's something called the edge. And what's on the edge with pizza? Crust, our favorite parts of the pizza, right? Really? Oh, good. I like that, Nixie. That's good. Well, sometimes there's stuff that there's a sense that the closer you are to the center, the more delicious it is. Maybe there's some cheese or some vegan cheese, or I don't know, whatever you put on your pizza. And then when you get out to the outside, maybe we're saying, well, let's stop. I've had enough. We'll save this one for someone else, maybe mom or dad. But I've come to learn that something is powerful, whether it's in a pizza, or anything else that happens when we get closer to the edge. I think about this room right here. It's kind of a circle. It's not a full circle, but you kind of draw your line and draw it around. Well, the center, okay, we have all these great kids. That's pretty awesome. But what's on the edges that's not in the center? What do we see? What do we see on the edges? What do you see over there, over here? Walls, yes. And some windows. And what comes through the windows? Sunlight, natural light, nothing against these, but we get this natural light coming in. These folks over here are reconsidering their life decisions. So we have all of this wonderful stuff in the middle, but it's actually these windows that are on the edges that bring light into this place that lets us see one another's beautiful faces and remember that we're not alone, but in this community. What else might be on the edges? Let's look at this picture I have here. Oh boy. So if you were a bird and you were about, let's say 20,000, maybe 30,000 feet up, I don't really know math. What is this that we're looking at right now? Can anyone guess? From way up in the sky? Yeah, Nora? It's a neighborhood. I wonder whose neighborhood it is. Can anyone guess? There's a little circle over there in the back. Maybe that's something you can walk around in. Maybe there's some stones in it. Anyone have a guess? Yeah? Oh, it's this neighborhood. Way to go. You saw that place? So that's our neighborhood right here. So the building is the big one in the middle. And then there's our parking lots that are now newly paved thanks to our capital gifts. And we have our what's that called? Labyrinth that has not yet had its stones put down, but it's there. And then over here on the left, does anyone know what this is right here? This part right here? It's right over there. There's a big house on it now. It's called a temple. Yeah. the Hindu temple and our partners with the Hindu community. Does anyone know whose house that is up there? This one up here? This guy who has like a tractor, has a nice dog. Tony Johnson, he probably read this lesson plan. So he's also on the edge of our property right here. And then this is Goler. You all drove in here today. And then here's 525, and that gets you back up to 46. And so this is a lot of kind of our area of our property. And I've been thinking about, there's a lot of amazing things that happen in the center of our property, in this building. All of our memories, all of our Halloween activities, all of our, just fun and learning that we have. But there's some things that I wonder what could be had and learned when we get to the edges of our community, at the edges of our congregational lines. So there's certain things that you can't get in the center, but you have to kind of walk over. So after the service today, maybe you want to go over to the labyrinth, which is way on the edge of the property. And it's close to Tony, who's helped us clearing trees along the top part of our property when they fall down. So that's a good neighbor. Good to have good neighbors. Any of you have good neighbors? Yeah. Oh, you're neighbors. Okay, good. Lynn and Marcia are next door neighbors. That's good. And our Hindu community, they're increasingly more and more our neighbors. He's your neighbor too? Interesting. You live together? Okay. But I think, and we'll talk about this more with the adults in a little bit, but I think that something's really powerful when we look towards the edges of our community, because it's often at those edge points where two things, two communities, two garden vegetables, something interacts that makes it stronger than when it's just by itself. If we were out in the middle of 100 acres away from all community, we'd have a lot of fun, but it would start feeling a little more like a cult. Because we need to be around other people. We need to be around other communities. And that's what this Interfaith Campus, and that's what these last many years have helped us to be, not isolated in the center, but connected both center and margins, realizing that we're more together. Let's get pizza after. I think that would have been good. I messed that up. So we're going to sing our children off to their classes, and we'll talk more with the adults about this soon. Let us sing.
When I saw the sermon topic for this Sunday, I could not help but reflect on my own gardening experience. When we first had a home of our own, I finally had the space to think about putting in a garden, and I wasted no time beginning preparations, buying the necessary tools, turning the soil, making decisions about what to plant, and purchasing the seeds. It was not a huge plot, but I learned that a smallish, well-tended garden can produce a surprising amount of vegetables. I began keeping a garden journal. Some people would say that's a little obsessive, but that's what I did. I began keeping this journal in which I detailed all kinds of information about each individual crop, planting dates, the specific variety planted, when the seedlings were first visible, and of course, notes about the success or failure sometimes of the crop. At about this time every fall, I would clean things up and turn leaves into the soil, putting the garden to bed, if you will. All the work was done by hand. I had no rototillers or anything like that. During the winter, ideally on a cold, blustery day with snow covering the ground, I would sit down with my seed catalogs and begin the process for the next growing season. Today is our annual meeting Sunday. I'll leave it to Reverend Nick to elaborate on the similarities between gardening and what we do here at UUCCI at this time of the year. But as I thought about my gardening experience, I did come to a few aha moments. One question to ask might be, how did I, with my garden, and we, with our year here at UUCCI, do this year, either in the garden or in being true to our values and moving toward the attainment of our ends? I was very intentional in planning my garden for the following year. Should we not also be intentional at UUCCI when we make our plans for 2023? And finally, how do we prepare the ground in both cases to improve the likelihood of success? And just one final thought that occurred to me as I was doing my gardening thinking. In gardening and in the work we're called upon to do, sometimes you must be willing to dig in and get your hands dirty.
Our reading today is an excerpt from Human Permaculture, Life Design for Resilient Living. The illustration, House Person, is inspired by a drawing on David Holmgren's website, representing the appropriate position of humans within the universe. Each person and their habitat are harmoniously connected to the environment. In Holmgren's view, it is incumbent upon each person to become a responsible citizen and to do their part in building a sustainable world without waiting for ready-made solutions to arrive from on high. These are the 12 principles of permaculture. 1, observe and interact. 2, catch and store energy. 3, obtain a yield. 4, apply self-regulation and accept feedback. 5, use and value renewable resources and services. 6, produce no waste. 7, design from patterns to details. 8, integrate rather than segregate. 9, use small and slow solutions. 10, use and value diversity. 11, use edges and value the marginal. And 12, creatively use and respond to change. You may not notice it. Sitting there in those chairs, oriented as you are with carpet beneath your feet, with artificial and natural light filling this room around us. But truly, we gather this morning upon soil and sand, upon memory and hope, upon what was that has made way for what is now. Here, on this rich soil, we have built a community, nurtured a garden, or rather we relocated or transplanted a community in the early 2000s. And in so doing, we gave them a home. We gave ourselves a home, and this home upon the earth, this soil unseen, but there beneath our feet, beneath the carpet and the concrete foundation of our congregation, has been a special space for gathering for over 2 decades. Countless new people of all ages and all backgrounds have visited this land, have entered into this building, and have received the gifts of this community. They and each of you have received precious gifts of welcome and nourishment, learning and growth, connection and meaning for life. Yes, yours, but also our life together. And of all days, today, I cannot help but wonder about the soil beneath our feet, the land upon which we have made a home for all people of goodwill and compassion. On this, our 55th annual meeting Sunday, a Sunday in which we gather to do the good work that a congregation is called to do, to lift up democracy, to lift up our values, to set forth our priorities, and to reaffirm our covenant with one another and with those past and those yet to come. I am curious, yes, if we recognize what is not merely beneath our feet, but what surrounds us in this sacred gathering, what might happen? For I believe, as horrible and difficult these past 3 years have been for our world, for our nation, for our community here too, as challenging and anxiety producing the pandemic has been, or the threat of political and racialized violence has been, or ecological collapse has been, a counter movement has been afoot, both within our community and across communities throughout this world. I cannot speak to all aspects of this movement, but I do feel like I have gained a small vantage point of the work of this congregation, of our congregation, in developing a new vision, a renewed vision and purpose that we are all called to embody and move towards. You might call it a new garden here in this corner of the world. Indeed, over the past 5.5 years that we have been engaging in shared ministry, and in the 50 years prior to that many of you have been engaged in shared ministry, something profound has been happening, and I'd like to speak to that this morning. During this sermon series, you see, we have focused on the roots that have given us life, that have shaped our lives. These life roots are drawn from our biological ancestors, from our spiritual forebears and contemporaries, and also from our local context, our congregational roots, our roots to the very ground of our being and our becoming, both now and throughout our lives. Those roots to family, to wider influences, and to place exist in a dynamic and cyclical flowing as we approach forks in the roads and challenges and changes to our very existence, individually and collectively. Those changes, both large and unquestionable, and those small and intimate, lead us to a critical, existential, and collective decision. Now what? Where do we go from here? Out of loss or change, out of pivoting and transitioning, out of summer into fall, where do we go from here? Well, I believe that we have an opportunity on this 55th annual meeting Sunday to reaffirm our values and prepare to enter a new chapter together. Yes, it will be one of rest and renewal, of reflection and celebration, of seeking justice and dreaming a new world into being. But what values will we dedicate our lives to this day? We have stated many values, those values that shape our ministry and lives together, way back in 2018, I believe, that as a congregation, our values are nurturing community with love and compassion. We value freedom of spiritual and intellectual growth. We value openness to the mystery of life, and we value courageous, thoughtful actions. That's what we said we value. Well, my friend, these are indeed our values, and but they are not the only things, I believe, that we have been planting in the soil around us, or how we have been planting and engaging in this garden of our spiritual and collective lives together. Indeed, I believe a wider culture has been formulating under the surface. Despite the challenges and setbacks, despite the social isolation and uncertainty, we have cultivated a good piece of earth here on the edge of Bartholomew County that will help us to bring life and meaning, courage and hope to this part of the Midwest. Recently, I've become more fascinated by the topic of permaculture. And not just that, but to a subfield known as human permaculture. Many of you may be familiar, likely way more familiar than me, with the principles of permaculture that I named many of them this morning. But human permaculture takes these principles and applies them to human settings, to groups and communities that seek to live in greater harmony in and with the world. A few definitions. In a great book titled Human Permaculture, Life Design for Resilient Living, we can bring that down, Marty. Bernard Alonso and Cecile Gachon define permaculture, which is a combination of the words permanent, think sustainable, and agriculture, think agriculture, permaculture. They define permaculture as, quote, a systemic approach that makes it possible to create viable ecosystems inspired by the laws of nature. A systemic approach that makes it possible to create viable ecosystems inspired by the laws of nature. The jump then from permaculture to human permaculture takes a little off-ramp, goes a step further than merely social permaculture, which is about human interrelation. Human permaculture, rather, is about the interaction of human elements, interaction rather than interrelation, which are woven together in teams to create life in all its forms. Human permaculture is about the interaction of human talents, which are woven together in teams to create life in all its forms. This application of the principles of permaculture upon groups of human beings leads to a very interesting consideration about the work our congregation has been doing all these years now. Could it be that we have been applying these principles without even knowing it? Could we be gardeners on this land, in this building, like Steve, and in each of our hearts and in our collective being as a community? I believe so. But let's turn to the principles to see if this is the case. I'd like to speak now just briefly on each principle and how I see it manifesting here at UUCCI. 1, observe and interact. At UUCCI, we observe and interact. We are a thoughtful, curious people willing to notice, to truly look at what is happening in order to interact with intention and integrity. Our observation stems from our emphasis on reason, conscience, and humility. We know that ministry, that life, requires both passive and active engagement, because in doing so, we are able to create room for what is happening right before our eyes if we slow down to observe it. 2, catch and store energy. At UUCCI, we catch and store energy. We look for the life-giving, resonant parts of our lives together and lift those up, cherish those as programs and ways of being worthy of naming and carrying forth into our future. Like a snapshot in time by a camera or a heart, we look for the energy, celebrate the enthusiasm, and catch the wave. Where there is energy, there is life. And at UUCCI, we seek to not hold on to what is, we seek to not hold on to what is working. We seek to hold on to what is working and share it with those who long for it. 3, obtain a yield. At UUCCI, we obtain a yield. We know we are not just planters of good ideas, good intentions, but harvesters of impact and transformation. The impact and transformation we create must be harvested. To note that our good work produce a yield, a profit. Not for our profit, but for the benefit of the wider world. We take that yield, that harvest, and we reinvest it in ourselves, each other, and those who have yet to come through those doors, and to our neighbors and partners and wider community and the world. 4, apply self-regulation and accept feedback. At UUCCI, we apply self-regulation and accept feedback. We expect one another to be responsible in our involvement in this community. This is a community of values, ethical commitments, and consideration of our impacts on one another. We are in covenant with one another, bound not by common belief, but by common commitments. We are committed to one another and to grow together in a spirit of love and service within and beyond this congregation. Thus, we are willing to regulate, do a temperature check, a personal audit of our actions, and consider what feedback we are receiving and willing to hear, and what changes we might make individually and collectively so that we can begin again each day, each Sunday, or any other day in love. 5, use and value renewable resources and services. At UUCCI, we use and value renewable resources and services. Well, not only are we earth conscious with our emphasis on solar power, native plantings, low to no pesticide use, etc., but this philosophy is applied within our relationships, our ministry, and our governance of this congregation. We are good stewards of our resources, of our staff, of our building and grounds, of this living tradition of Unitarian Universalism that both serves us and to which we offer our own resource and support in return. We do this so that our services may continue and continue for decades to come. 6, produce no waste. At UUCCI, we produce no waste. Aspirational as this is, we know that waste must be avoided, or one person's waste is another person's treasure. That doesn't mean we hoard or we hang on to things that have run the course of their usefulness. We do not deny the reality of death. Rather, we look to transform waste into useful, regenerative energy that can provide new ideas, new programs, and pathways to our collective health and liberation as a community and a world. 7, design from patterns to details. At UUCCI, we design from patterns to details. We try not to get lost in the details, but notice the larger patterns or the essential through line of our lives together. It is in these patterns, that we come to discover the beauty of the forest, that indeed the single tree is magnified by its fellowship with all life and the verdancy of our planet. By emphasizing the patterns, we can keep our eye on the big picture and allow the details to follow in a way that celebrates and honors where we are headed as a community. 8, integrate rather than segregate. At UUCCI, we integrate rather than segregate. We thrive when we integrate our lives and ministries within and beyond the walls of our community. We value integrity as a means by which we enhance our lives, our relationships to others, and our positive impact in the world. If we create silos, divide our community with some headed this way and some headed that way, rather than creating a deep sense of integration and collective purpose, we will struggle. But we at UUCCI seek to integrate, collaborate, and move with deliberate, thoughtful action. 9, use small and slow solutions. At UUCCI, we use small and slow solutions. We don't expect easy answers to life's big questions or the questions of being human or being a human in community. Rather, we focus on the small and the slow, the pathways that honor the process and our relationships. We not only observe with great care, but we resolve issues with a strong concern for our values and who we say we are as a congregation. As the adage goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. 10, use and value diversity. At UUCCI, we use and value diversity. We are not monotonous, uniform, or simple. We are filled with multitudes, both within each heart of our congregants and within the community, the congregation together. The diversity of our identities, gifts, experiences, and passions lead us to a more robust and fulfilling journey together toward who we are becoming in the world today. We don't just value diversity, we use with mutuality and care this diverse beauty for the application and progressive movement through our lives together. 11, use edges and value the marginal. At UUCCI, we use edges and value the marginal. We care for not just what is at the center of our congregation, our mission, our purpose, but what resides at the edge, the margins, the horizon beyond. We seek a wider view, a longer view, understanding past, present, and future. There is a wisdom and beauty to be found on the edges and at the margins. The view of truth and meaning, the passion for liberation and justice rests on the circumference around which we gather in circle, in song, in covenant as a people of love and service. And 12, creatively use and respond to change. At UUCCI, we creatively use and respond to change. We see change as a part of the human experience and the hope of our collective liberation. To change is to create. To create, we must co-create, create together where two or more are gathered, sometimes something new that must come into this world to respond to the change that is before us. We know that change can be hard and scary, but we recognize that through change, we learn more about ourselves, deepen our relationships, remember our ancestors, tap into our resilience, and find the energy to become who we must be in a world of increasing challenge. Friends, the principles of permaculture, the application to the social and human realm in which we live, is a reminder that what we are doing here as a community now, 55 years after our founding, is a beautiful thing. It is miraculous as the seed that becomes food or the acorn that becomes a tree. The fostering of human community is a mystery that science can only offer a partial answer. That mystery, that beauty, is something that we can come to learn and feel and know deep in our bones, just as countless others have for over a half century now in this part of Indiana. Through further exploration and application of these principles, now, during the sabbatical and into the next chapter of our shared ministry, there is nothing we cannot do together. For together we are the UU Congregation of Columbus, Indiana. And so it has been, and so it will continue to be day by day, year by year, as we move closer and closer to that glorious time, known by many names, but for us, we might call it the time of harvest. We might call it the time of harvest. As Marge Piercy reminds us, every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after all this long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes. The harvest is coming, dear friends. May it be so. And amen.